Very good, friends. Hi, Doc South here with you. Another little tidbit for History of Chester, New Jersey on Facebook. They've been nice enough to let me post some of my memories of growing up in Chester, Chester, New Jersey, that is, and had there's actually I think there's a Chester in almost every state. I think there's quite a few Chesters. I think in Roman it means camp. I think it does. Yeah, yeah. I know. I guess if you were a Roman soldier and you wanted to sing a camp song, you'd say Chester, Chester, Chester. Yeah, yeah. I guess. Any case, enough said. The and oh gosh, I camped there for quite a while. Lived in Chester. Actually, went there in 1956. Yeah, with my parents, of course, moved in. It was the winter, and boy, it sure was chilly, and it was an amazing to go from living in the city of Elizabeth to the boondocks. And Chester was definitely the good old boondocks. And oh man, I couldn't have been happier moving into that town. But I had to go meet the kids. And of course, you do that by going to school. And evidently, one of the fans of the History of Chester Facebook site is a young lady named Suzanne, and she wondered if I had just done, I did, I think yesterday, day before, a video about extolling the virtues of one really great teacher at Chester School, Mr. Bragg, and she wondered if I had anything to do, any knowledge of a teacher named Mr. DeFalco. And yes, Suzanne, I was in his class. Yeah, the at least for half a year. When my family moved to Chester, of course, one day they spoiled the fun by saying, "Hey, you got to go to school." I do. Oh, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get beat up everywhere I go. That's sort of how it was with the new kid uh, in Elizabeth and a town called Island I lived in. Everybody already was the Fonzie back then, and or trying to be, and so you sort of had to scuffle it out, which frankly I've never been too good at. The So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm dead again. So anyway, I go to school. Mom puts, I have to go see the school nurse. She's checking me out. She's looking at me, saying, he's kind of scrawny. I think she said that. Mrs. Truax. She must have been an army nurse. I don't know, but yeah, he's kind of scrawny. Well, okay, we'll fatten him up. The school lunch is here and all that. And Mom was kind of saying, I don't think he's scrawny at all. He's he he's just wiry. No, well, in any case, turns out Mom was right. My God, I mean, no, the Miss Truax was right. Mom was right too. I was kind of thin, but I was maybe oh my gosh, I get taken up. I guess the principal takes me up to see Mr. DeFalco's class. Introduce me, Mr. DeFalco. We have a newcomer for you. Oh, great. Okay. Well, who do we got? Oh, okay. And you could see I walk into the classroom, and there's all these guys that are about twice my size. Yeah, I'm thinking, well, I'm in the wrong class. This must be college. This must be Rutgers football team or something. What is this? Look at all these guys. And the school secretary introduces me, and it was Mr. DeFalco's class. I remember him looking me over. I'm looking him over. I'm thinking, okay, I can hide behind him if the kids get too rough on me. I guess I better pal up to the teacher to begin with, and but yeah, and he was Mr. DeFalco. I found out later the kids called him, especially the girls, called him Daddy D, Daddy D. Yeah, and he actually was a pretty decent guy. And the kids too. Come to think of it, no one laid a hand on me. they knew they'd break me in half. Most of those kids. Oh my God, they were all farm kids. They had muscles, when they were born. Okay, you just no excuse. You're born. get to work, and yeah, we got corn to get in. Come on, what are you doing sitting there? Put on your diaper. Let's get out in the fields. Let's go. I mean, these kids were, but they were all so nice. And Mr. DeFalco, he kind of looked the best I can remember. I don't have a photo to compare, but he looked a lot to me like Tony Soprano. Like Tony Soprano looks, yeah. And Tony Soprano, not when he's shooting someone, but Tony Soprano when he's smiling. Well, come to think of it, he smiled a lot when he shot people, didn't he? But when he's just sitting with his, yeah, Mr. DeFalco kind of had that air about him. And he was, I thought, a very good listener, as I recall. I don't, if you were making a presentation, I don't think he interrupted you, let you sink or swim on your statements. Then he might debate it with you one way or another. But for the most part, I think you always got your 2 cents in with him, and then he got his 2 cents in. But all in all, I don't recall, I don't really have much to remember about him. It was so long ago. God, you figure that was 60 some years ago now. But he's probably gone to that great classroom in the sky by now. But I don't recall him being, I seem to remember him being a pretty cool teacher. I know one thing, he liked the stuff I'd write. Yeah. Even back then, I loved writing stories and show and tell stories to please people. Nothing I liked better, and it still is my favorite thing to do. And yeah, I think he'd get a charge out of some of the stuff I did. Yeah, yeah, and I wowed him with entertainment. Yeah, and the kids, I don't know, the kids in the class, like I said, were pretty decent. It wasn't too long for I had my share of friends. I always thought the girls were, at 10 years old, you start looking at girls thinking, that girl's strangely attractive. Look at her. Yeah. And they're looking at you, yeah, I guess the juices are starting to flow. And, I had no real gripe with Mr. DeFalco. He did have one controversy that I know of. He had a gavel. Yeah, he had a gavel, and when he wanted the class to come to order, he'd pound on the gavel. Class, come on, it's time for English or whatever. And one day, I guess he's pounding with the gavel, and I don't know, maybe he had an especially oily sandwich for lunch. I don't know what happened, but that gavel came out of his hand, and it sailed across the room, and it darn near hit a kid. It didn't. Oh, thank God it didn't. But it was a pretty big gavel. But yeah, that got out to the school board, and I know he had some explaining to do. Why are you throwing a gavel at a kid? Well, he didn't. Again, like I said, he would never do something like that. But it was, I remember, I think it was one of the girls in the class. I think Mr. DeFalco was right-handed. The girls kind of sat on the other side of the classroom. We had, I remember the guys, like I said, were all, I think I was bigger than maybe one kid in the class. The rest of them towered over me. There was even one fella named Gary, who was, I think he had dyslexia, and he stayed back a lot. I think he was 15 years old in fifth grade. And he was not, no, he certainly wasn't dumb. He knew his math pretty good. Reading, you could tell reading was tough on him. And I got a hunch if they had done testing, they would have found he was dyslexic. He came from a farm family, so, he knew how to be a farmer already. And so he was on his way to being fairly successful once I think he left school in sixth grade. It just wasn't going to be his thing. And he was doing okay, and then I guess one day he had a tragic auto wreck, and he was killed. But that was, so he didn't live too long a life, but he was, again, he learned enough in school that he could be a good farmer. And he was in the class. I remember looking at him thinking, praying, oh my God, please don't let him be a bully. And he wasn't. He was actually a very nice guy. You get to know him. He was fun to talk to. It was and oh gosh, what else? I think we may have gone half days for when I was in fifth grade. I think from sixth grade on, I think it was full days. But I think we did the half day thing. A lot of people ask about that. You see, we were baby boomers, my generation. We were the kids that came along after the parents, after World War II ended, the soldiers came home and they made beelines to in some cases to the first girl they saw. Proposed marriage, got married, and they stayed married, forever. And kids, lots of kids. And it's, so there was a mess of us, and the schools just weren't able to take the load. So we had to we did shifts. Maybe you had the morning shift, maybe you had the afternoon shift. And you were in school maybe 4 hours each shift. Yeah. And you had like extra homework you did. And they worked it out. And I'm not so certain, but I think fifth grade, once we got to sixth grade, I think they had enough teachers and they were able to run us full time, I believe. Other than that, Mr. DeFalco, I thought was, nice teacher. I liked he wasn't a snappy dresser. He had his suit jacket, but I don't recall it being anything fancy. He wore his tie, but if I recall right, he kind of kept it loose. Yeah, and like I said, he was a good listener. He was a good listener, which, frankly, I think, he'd let you get your point across. If I recall right, he'd let you get your point across, and then then it was his turn to talk, and chances are he'd rip your point to shreds, which is not so bad, right? And then you had a chance for rebuttal. Okay. And all in all, though, I had to say, moving into Chester, I found the kids were friendlier, much more pleasant, and I had good friends within a week or two. It was absolutely amazing, and I thought it'd be the bloodiest week of my life. No, kids were pretty cool, and so there you go. I don't know much else I can say except thank you, Suzanne. That was nice of you to ask, and yeah, I had every intention of getting in some stuff about Daddy D. Okay, I'll catch you later, friends. Thank you, and God bless.